Now, sound like the guy from one of my favorite YouTube videos doing the what was he doing? The Spider-Man at the Popeyes drive-thru thing. Can you hear me now, Patty? I just realized every time I turn this new module on I'm using, it supposedly makes my voice sound better according to D. It should be working now. You should be able to hear me. And hopefully it's not too loud, or I'll have to back off on this volume knob a little bit because I've got one through my headphones and then one for the microphone, which looks pretty good. It's not too high. So it sounds good? Better than usual? Great. Thanks, Mark. Good seeing you. Darnell, of course, haven't seen you in a while. Hey, Lee. It was great seeing Mary get on. Always love hearing from Mary. Mary, you're in the land down under, if I'm not mistaken. And my good mate Tim from England is on there. And speaking of all things England, I was really tickled to get this Facebook page invite. I don't even know if they noticed who they were sending it to, but it was for Bennett's Chimney Sweeps. Invited you to join the group. Business adverts all around Cheshire. I love getting anything from Cheshire, my ancestral home of a mere 270 years ago. Cheshire, England. Tim, you're not too far away from my ancestral home of Cheshire. Actually, we come out of Stoke-on-Trent, England, and then up through the whole Cheshire region is where the Beesons hail from England, and that's where our coat of arms is seated. I think they could just be described as an argent with 6 B's, bumblebees, of course, for Beeson. And the name used to have a T in it back in the day, but the T was mostly silent, even though there's a town still called Beest in England. And I wanted to ask, this is for Patty's sake, if anyone, I already asked you, Tim, because you're in England, but if anybody knows, has ever been to a place called Rufford, England, which is really in the middle of nowhere. I think that's kind of course, it's north of London. London's more south. And Tim, it's probably an hour drive for you, but I'm going to probably force you to drive out there and get me some video of it, because there's this guy that has a YouTube channel of all these cars in England getting stuck in the water, and they're all trying to get through this, what they call Rufford Ford. The ford, I guess, is where this river comes through this little town in England, and the cars get stuck. And this guy posts these YouTube videos of all the cars getting stuck, and it's hilarious. He's got multiple videos, and they do really well. They're like totally viral. I don't know why, but if you know the truth of the people getting their cars stuck in the water trying to make it through this place, it's like all they would have to do is not go through the water and back up, and literally less than 10 minutes they could be wherever they want to be in England. You know, you don't have to go through this spot, but they like do it. Is it like, I don't know if it's a dare or they just think they can make it or not, but the cars get stuck in the water at Rufford Ford, as Patty says. Those videos are hilarious. I don't know the guy that puts that up, but one of the really good ones is called, what's it called? Something in a crash. The cars are getting stalled out, but it's the guy's channel on YouTube. It's great. Hey, Ronnie, good seeing you. Always like hearing Ronnie. Ronnie posts like the coolest videos on all of social media. No one has cooler videos than Ronnie. Of course, we lovingly know him as Gonzo, but man, he is. I just can't imagine how you even get those shots, dude. It's like you must be traveling with like a professional photographer that can get such cool shots. I don't know if you're GoProing those shots or what you're doing, bro, but those are amazing. I mean, the jumping and the water, and there's so many cool shots you get. I just can't even imagine. I'd like to see like the shot behind the shot, Ronnie, of all those awesome photos you put up are amazing, and the videos too. But the stills you get are just the best I've seen anywhere. But if anyone's ever been to Rufford, England, let me know. I just want to. It's just so English to try to drive your car through somewhere you don't have to. I think Tim would agree. Tim would definitely agree. So this is the new audio setup. Hopefully it sounds pretty good, but I'm still kind of working it around. That's kind of why I'm doing the video. I wanted to do a little reading just to kind of balance it out for podcast and this show. And at first I was trouble having to get the new audio to sync with StreamYard. And I was like, I hope I don't have to use something new because I really like this mic setup that D helped me with. Yeah, you capture every day, man. It's just like a great document. I mean, those, yeah, I definitely want to see behind the scenes because I don't know how you're getting those shots, bro. Those are just amazing. And I mean, you're amazing too, girl. You be able to do all the handstands and all that stuff. I mean, it is incredible. You're not far from Liverpool? Lee? I always like to know where everybody is, especially in England. I always want to know. I always like my geography. I always want to know where everything is in England for some reason. Tim, I know where you are, and I know where my other friends are in England, but I love to know where everybody is in England. I don't know why. I want to know where Rutherford Ford is in England, and I do know where it is. I just haven't been there. I've been to London and a little bit outside of London, but I have not been able to go up to my ancestral home of Cheshire, as I'm told it's called. Chess, like the game of chess, ear, you like your ear, Cheshire. Thanks, Ronnie. Yeah, my buddy who does a lot of audio work and has an awesome voice said, "Man, you have no bass. You know, you have a good voice, but he said you have no bass in your voice. You've got to upgrade." And I was like, "Okay, I'll finally do it. As soon as you buy me what I need, I'm, I'm going to upgrade my audio." And he did most of it. So major shout out to who I'm going to dedicate this to, along with my good buddy that's already on here. So I'll say it, Tim Wallace, my good friend. We talk almost every day on the messenger. It just works best for us in our groups and stuff. You were close. Were you close to where we're from? Or were you close to, even better than our ancestral home, were you close to Rufford Ford? Rufford Ford. Even more important than Cheshire is Rufford Ford, which is nowhere near Cheshire. But like Tim said, I think you said yesterday, Tim, like you could drive the whole country in 3 hours. I mean, I could drive 3 hours and I'll still be in Texas. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, it was kind of cool to get an invite to. I'll say it again, just for the advertising. If you're anywhere near Cheshire, England, check out Bennett's Chimney Sweeps, because he invited me to join the group Business Adverts All Around Cheshire. So I am definitely going to join that group just for the fun of it, and hopefully visit these guys one day just to see chimney sweeps. That reminds me of like Mary Poppins, Dick Van Dyke doing the chimney sweeps. Brings back good memories. You are close when you're in Liverpool. You're correct. You're probably about, if you're in Liverpool, you're probably not. I mean, I don't know how the roads go. Tim would know, but you're probably about an hour, maybe hour and 15 minutes tops from Liverpool. If you go roughly south, of course, Liverpool's near the water. So Liverpool's far west England. So you'd have to go southeast a little bit. Almost not due south, but southeast a little bit to get to Cheshire. Oh, you're in Wales. No, I think if I looked it up right, Rufford, where this place is actually a little more. If you're in central England, like I guess, Tim, I'd say you're kind of central, right? In London being south, I'd say that Rufford that I looked up was more to the west of where you are. Not closer to Liverpool the other way, but there could be more than one. I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm just watching this stuff on YouTube. But Cheshire is absolutely close to Liverpool. Oh, speaking of the 7 cigarettes, Tim, I got this from, I never showed you what Packer Jack gave me this. These are Raleigh filter tip coupons. If you remember the famous story of Lyle Cameron, who felt he may have made contact with DB Cooper before the jump, because a man was asking about how to jump out of a jet. I don't know if he specifically said a 727, but he said that he was asking questions about oxygen or whatever, or how you would jump out of a jet and at Lyle Cameron's drop zone outside of Los Angeles. And he said the man had on him these Raleigh coupons. And of course, we know DB Cooper smoked Raleigh filter tip cigarettes. So really cool gift from Packer. And speaking about gifts, from another friend I was talking to today, who we're hoping to record soon, Now I've got like 4 really favorite Green Berets of all time, and one of them's, and probably the top right now, is going to be Al Keller for sure. I love Al Keller. He's just the nicest guy on the earth. He had sent me this MacVSOG puck coin, and puck means Presidential Unit Citation commemorative coin. So they call it a puck coin, and they were dedicated on April 4th of 2001. CCN. These are the different operating bases for MacVSOG. And on the back, you see the Special Forces logo with Presidential Unit Citation. And it says presented by LTG Doug Brown, and the date, Special Forces Airborne. CCN, which is Command and Control North. CCC is Command and Control Central. CCS is Command and Control South. Braden was at Contum, which is CCN, I believe. But correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's Braden was CCN, being near Contum, but that was the early days of MacVSOG. I think he was part of what they call the original 33 at Contum, Vietnam, when he was in SOG with the pioneers of MacVSOG were basically started in late 1965, early 66, which brings me to me wanting to read the Ramparts article, because I realized that, one, I want to test the new microphone out, and two, a lot of people don't like to read. I'm not a big reader. I wish I was. I'm like a go watch the movie guy. I wish I was a better reader, because I mean, that really kind of rules me out forever writing fiction. I think the best fiction writers are people that are well read, even if they're reading nonfiction. They're just better writers for fiction. And nonfiction, at least you can go research it like I do, and my co-writer and editor. And even though she's very well read, but I'm not. And I know a lot of things just because I can just memorize useless information. But I wish I was that well read, because it's a really big asset for, especially if you want to write fiction. And a good friend of mine is writing a fiction book right now. And he just finished it, but I think he's trying to find a publisher, or I don't know if I don't think he's gonna self-publish. I think he wants actually he wants an agent to farm it out to different publishers. But I know it's going to be a fantastic book, and it's got some true crime ties. It's got some I'll just call it, I'm not giving anything away, and I hope he's not listening, but it's got some let's just say some Zodiac killer influences on it. I think that would be fair to say. It's got some Zodiac killer influences in it's fiction, but it's going to have some Zodiac killer influences. I think Ned kind of was influenced by Zodiac and Charles Manson when he did his book, and had a copy of Ned's book. I wanted to show another book that I had finally got an autograph when I got to meet Tony Wright in person not too long ago, which was great. Of course, he wrote Things Are Not Right About the Yuba County Five. I've been friends with Tony for years now, and finally got to meet him in person here in Texas with Dallas Weir Jr. I might have mentioned this on the last podcast, but it was really neat getting to meet Tony and Dallas's wife. And we went to lunch, and then we went and got to go see Tony's Yuba County Five presentation at the library in River Oaks in Houston. Very nice building. It's fantastic. Can't even remember the funky name of that library. I thought it was like a Catholic school. I didn't even know it was a library. And my company owns and manages a shopping center 2 blocks away, and I didn't even know the name of it. But really nice library. It's better than, way far better than the downtown Houston library. Not far from it, but it's just a really nice facility. Probably the nicest library in the Houston public library system. I don't even have a library card anymore. I don't know why. Everything's on the internet, so why would you need it, right? You're as south as you could get? I thought you were like north of London. You're near Portsmouth? Okay, maybe I was thinking of my other buddy. Raleigh sent cigarette packs to WW2 soldiers. Did they really? Did Raleigh really send cigarette packs to World War II soldiers? I didn't know that. Patty put up the Rufford Ford YouTube right there. So you could either click on that link that Patty put up, or you can maybe highlight it and go to the page and watch the cars getting stuck in the water. Like, Tim, you as an Englishman, why do the English want to try to get through that water when they don't have to? Yes, very great company. Appreciate that, Ronnie. Yeah, I got to meet up with him. Dallas was great. Man, he is just such a good guy. And Dallas actually met his wife at Bible College in San Antonio, Texas. And then when he met her, they got married, moved back to the Yuba County area for roughly a decade. Then they relocated back to Texas, around the Dallas Fort Worth area is what they did. But he vividly remembers all the Yuba County Five guys. I mean, of course, he knows his uncle pretty well. He's of that age where he wasn't too young not to remember times with his uncle. I think he might have been 12, 13 years old. Dallas, correct me if I'm wrong, but remembers going bowling with the Yuba County Five, all of them. You knew, Jackie, of course. That was good friends with Ted Weir, his uncle, and he was good friends with all the guys, really. Probably not Matthias so much, but nobody was. But definitely the other, the four of the Yuba County Five he knew well. I mean, I don't know if I ever asked Dallas if he ever had met Gary Matthias, but he definitely knew Jackie well. He definitely knew Doc well, and definitely knew Bill pretty well, and remembers going to, driving to places with at least, the four members of the Yuba County Five. And one thing he told me, like, for if you're really a big Yuba County Five junkie, I know there's a couple on here, and I need to do another Yuba show soon, probably with Tony. Is he told me that the story about his uncle, which is of course Ted Weir, the one they found deceased in the cabin up in the Plumas National Forest, was the whole story about Ted ordering like $200 worth of pencils or something was not true. He wasn't like really trying to defend him. He just said the story's not true. It came out of his mom accidentally saying one time, like, if you left Ted to his own devices, he'd buy 200 pencils or something like that. And that's kind of where that story grew out of. So it's not really a true story. It is true about the story about Ted having to be woken up when the house was on fire, and his brothers had to wake him up and said, "Hey, Ted, the house is on fire. We need to leave. We're gonna die if we stay here." And Ted famously said, "No, I can't. I need my sleep. I got to go to work the next morning." And they're like, "No, Ted, the house is on fire." That story is true, but the one about the pencils is not really true. It just kind of shows you how things can get taken out of context and kind of bring on life of their own. Big B Art's a Yuba guy, so there's a piece of trivia for you, Art. The Big B Art. The pencil story and Ted Weir is not true. It comes from, I think, his mom just making a comment about it. Like, it's something that he would have done if he was left to his own devices or something like that. So that story's not true. But the story about him being awakened to leave the burning house is true. So that's one thing I got out of that. If you're really hardcore Yuba County Five guy, and of course, if you really know the case, you know that there is a sixth member of the Gateway Gators that, of course, wasn't with the boys the night they went missing. And I'll leave that as a trivia question. If you know the sixth member of the Gateway Gators basketball team, of course, we think we identified the Gateway projects bomber, the guy that did the arson attacks on the Gateway projects. And I've said his name on this channel a few times, and I haven't been sued yet, so I'm pretty sure he's dead. But we're pretty sure we solved that. And after I'd reached out to the boys' coach, that's how I found out there was another member of the team. But his mother was real overprotective, so he wasn't allowed to, go do some of these more social things with the boys. You got to dance with Jackie Hewitt's girlfriend Ruth at a day program before. Yeah, the boys. One thing people don't understand is the boys were really into girls. I mean, big time. I think Dallas talked about that a lot, about his uncle Ted, how they were, they were really, they were grown men, kind of in boys' bodies in a way, intellectually to some point, just not as bad as the media would portray them. Because unfortunately, back then in the late 70s, you didn't have any other words, like special needs didn't exist. They would just call them retarded or semi-retarded, and it's kind of unfortunate. And those words aren't used today, and that's great, but they were used back then. So that's why you see them in the newspaper. So it wasn't like the people in the newspapers were trying to make them worse off than they really were. But when we read those words now with a negative connotation, it kind of makes them seem more worse off than they really were. I mean, especially guys like Doc Madruga, who could definitely knew when he was lost. I could tell you that. I mean, I know his nephew very well. His nephew is one of the few people that ever drove that car and knows his uncle obviously really well. They weren't that far apart in age, maybe 8 or 9 years. So it was it was an uncle nephew situation, but I think that the age gap wasn't real big. It wasn't like a 20, 30 year age gap between some nephews and uncles or nieces and aunts. It was only like a 10-year plus, 10-year max. I mean, age gap between Jack Madruga and his nephew George. Good guy, love George to death. And speaking of good guys, I really enjoyed getting to do a little communication today with Al Keller, bringing me back around to all things Ted Braden. Al Keller, of course, was the number 3. He was the Ted Braden was the 1-0 of Team Colorado, of course, the team of MACV SOG, Military Assistance Command. And, I used to screw up and call that, what did I call it? I'd always screw up because I blame it on Bruce Smith, the mayor of DB Cooperville, because he would say it is Military Assistance Command, but he called it something else. And I would always say whatever Bruce said because that's the first time I heard it. Really, that's kind of how I'm into Braden. It's because Bruce and a guy named Snowman. Of course, I know Snowman's real name, but I think he still likes a little anonymity. But if people know who Snowman is, he's a guy that posted on DB Cooper message boards years ago. It still does from time to time. And this guy is like off the chart smart. I know a lot of really smart people, PhDs, you name it. And this guy is like wicked smart. If y'all know who Mark Metzler is, of course, a guy in the Cooper Vortex who owns a lot of jumping gear. He's jumped he's I think a 50-year parachutist, 5 decades of parachuting experience this guy has, and some night jumps. I mean, he's jumped Army surplus gear. He's jumped every civilian chute there is known to man. Really avid skydiver. He's an engineer by trade. I think he's also an attorney as well. He's an attorney and an engineer. I think he's a dual trained guy. Mark's a super smart guy. And when I was at CooperCon last year, Mark pulled me aside and said this. He goes, "Do you know how smart Snowman is?" And I was like, "I think he invented something called Linux or something." Yeah, I know this guy's super off the chart smart, And of course, Snowman, Tim knows, is a Braden guy. One of Gary Mathias's friends was a blind person who became one of your friends. I didn't know, you never said any of this, Art. Who became one of your friends too, and you and Gary loved helping one of your friends. I know Gary's sister really well, Tammy. So I know quite a bit about Gary. Somebody mentioned his brother to me the other day, and he wasn't that close to his brother. I know it was his half brother, but from what I know, at least from Tammy, they were never that close. I think he might have another half sibling. I don't know if it's another brother or sister. I can't remember. Of course, Sharon and Tammy were Gary Mathias's two sisters. And I know Sharon, of course, unfortunately, Tammy passed away many years ago, buried there in Yuba City. You think Don Cheney's daughter released new pictures of Don? Well, she did not, but a friend of hers did. And let's just say that didn't help their cause any, because one of them looks a lot like the sketch. That's all I'll say. If you look through my comment section on this channel, you'll see one of those pictures you're talking about, Wesley. It was not her herself. It was actually a good friend of hers. And I think Ross Geraci, my good friend, made some contact with him because this gentleman that's friends with her lives in San Diego, where she lived years ago. She doesn't live there now. Ross also lives in the San Diego area, and kind of knew. I think the guy's kind of a writer, but he was also a comic book artist or something like she is. But she did release those photos through her friend, and one of them is pretty interesting. I mean, they're all interesting to me, the ones I haven't seen. It was, and releasing the pictures was kind of shot at me because I kind of, pickpocketed a few, but so this was kind of like, hey, we're not hiding anything. Here's some more pictures kind of deal. And one of those pictures looked interesting. But if you look through the comment section here, maybe go back about 4 or 5 months when he posted the article, and the article didn't do him any favors either, because this whole thing, especially people that are kind of anti Don Cheney as Zodiac, are like to point to the fact that Arthur Lee Allen supposedly tried to molest his daughter. And she does not have a memory of that. She even says this through her friend that wrote the article. I won't say his name. He didn't say my name in the article. He alluded to me, but he didn't say my name. So I'll return him that same gesture. But that didn't do them any favors trying to exonerate him. She basically says she remembers the day, that she remembers a fishing pole or something very vividly, but does not remember Arthur Lee Allen touching her inappropriately. That really hurts their case. And any anti-Don people, that guy, who's that guy? Nancy Drew has a YouTube channel. He did like a little, and I posted it here. Who do you think is Zodiac? He did like a single Arthur Lee Allen, and then he did a Cheney Allen team, and then a couple other suspects. I can't even remember who they were. Maybe Larry Kane. I don't remember who, because it only lets you select 4. Keep hitting the microphone. It's probably making a noise. It'll only let you select 4. You'd have to do like multiple posts to be able to do more selections for suspects. But he just put those up there. And Cheney Allen did pretty well, but it was still behind a singular Arthur Lee Allen. And, this guy's group is mainly into the JohnBenet Ramsey case, which I know pretty well too, but it's so creepy to me. I hate doing a deep dive into JohnBenet Ramsey. It's just, I've made it known on this channel before. I think John and Patsy are involved. That's why I get the creeps when I see that John Ramsey's been invited to CrimeCon. I'm like, ugh. What if he is responsible for what happened to his daughter? A lot of people believe that. A lot of people that have really studied the case believe that. And the guy's being invited to CrimeCon like he's some celebrity. Like, hey, John, will you sign my program? I just can't go there, man. It just gives me the creeps. Maybe he's innocent. Like I said, I wasn't there, but a lot of people think he's got something to do with it. The way he acted when the female police officer with the weird eyes showed up over there. There's a lot of weird stuff in the whole orbit of John Ramsey. Of course, Patsy was whacked out. You remember the early days, they got separate lawyers. But anyway, I digress, but I'm talking about a group that's mainly into that, they mainly follow this guy for JohnBenet, not Zodiac, even though he does, I don't know, maybe 70% JohnBenet, 30% Zodiac. He kind of does those two. And I get it, because I can really only follow the 3 cases I do just because of bandwidth. It's just between a regular job and following this stuff. Very creepy family, Lee. You're right. Very creepy. John Ramsey got his money to start Access Graphics. See, I'm going back way in my memory, from his father-in-law arranging it for him. His father-in-law was not a wealthy guy. He was well connected, but he was not very wealthy, but just well connected. And he arranged the financing to get Access Graphics off the ground. And they eventually got bought out. And, John made good money. He wasn't like crazy wealthy, but he was well off. Definitely higher middle, upper middle class guy. But all the financing to start that company came from his father-in-law, which is really weird. And then, of course, his name was Don Paul, Paugh, if I have that right. Freemason from West Virginia, well-connected. Both his daughters won Miss West Virginia, including Patsy and her younger sister, her younger sister's still alive. I don't know if she lives in Georgia. Of course, that's when they moved the company. Pat and John met in Georgia, and they moved up to Boulder, of course. But very weird stuff. Yeah, very weird connections. You get into Fleet White Jr., really weird. Fleet White had a house in Aspen, I believe. My uncle has a house in Aspen. Of course, the big fight that Fleet White Jr. got into with John Ramsey in Atlanta at JohnBenet's funeral is really strange. Still, people don't know what that was about. But anyway, I digress. I want to go back to testing the microphone and reading this article, of course, from Ramparts Magazine. This original copy. You can still find one. Bill gave me one that was sent to just people that subscribed, which has so thank you to Bill. It has like the different articles are listed on the right. If you were a subscriber to Ramparts, this must have been one that you could maybe, I don't know if you could get it off like at a bookstore or store shelves. Of course, this was a anti-government, Vietnam type publication. And the writer of this particular article is a guy named Donald Duncan, and he was in special forces in Vietnam. He wasn't MACV-SOG, but he knew Ted Braden, not real well, but he knew of him because Braden was in SOG. That was Black Ops Special Forces. It was covert, clandestine. They had to sign a 20-year NDA before they became a member of MACV SOG, and that was the Black Ops section of Special Forces. Duncan was an officer in Special Forces, though, so he did know a little bit about Braden. So Duncan was offered a promotion in, I think, 1965 in Vietnam, and he just became really quickly disillusioned with the Vietnam War. So he turns down the promotion. I think he'd done enough time in Vietnam, so he leaves Vietnam, comes back to the States, and he becomes like one of the biggest advocates against the war in Vietnam for many reasons, because he just sees this as a no way out, just a government orchestrated debacle. Same as a lot of the guys that went over to Vietnam. They just thought, why are we over here? We take this mountain and then we give it back 4 days later. We lose 200 guys. And multiple platoons are dead. And we fight hard for this ground, and then we're told to evacuate. And then the NVA moves right back into the same area days later. They're like, what? They knew something was off, but that's not to take away from any of the bravery of these guys, because as you know, I'm very pro-Vietnam veteran, and I always have been. I mean, that's kind of why I like Braden, because I've always liked the DB Cooper story ever since In Search Of, and I've always liked Special Forces Vietnam. So it's like Reese's peanut butter cups for me. So I have a built-in bias towards Braden just because he was in Special Forces in Vietnam. So I admit that. I have a built-in bias for the guy because I like Cooper here and I like Special Forces here. So when I can put them together, I have my Reese's peanut butter cups. So I fully admit that. So that's where I come from. I wasn't on the plane. I wouldn't swear that Braden was DB Cooper. If he is, great. I still got to go to work the next morning. If he isn't, I still got to go to work the next morning. So that's the way I look at it. If I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Tar and feather me, I don't care. It's not that big of a deal, but I'm interested in him as a whole, just like my good friend Tim is here. And DR, you know who you are, who I'm dedicating this reading to, you two guys, because you two guys keep me motivated. I love our conversations about it because, here it's, I can do something that will get more viewers or whatever, but I don't really care. None of this makes any money anyway. Even, I was watching this other guy's channel who just did a interview with a MACV Saw guy, and it was great. It was Sean Ryan, if you know who that is, a military guy, interviewing a Saw guy, and it was a great interview. Sean Ryan's great interviewer, awesome guy. And I don't know how many subscribers he's got. Probably, I don't know, at least hundreds of thousands, I would guess. I haven't looked, but he still has to use Patreon to support his channel, which fortunately for him, he's got a lot of hardcore Patreon supporters to give him a lot of money so he can do it for a living, which is rare. But he's not making that living just from advertising on YouTube and having a lot of subscribers. He has to have people donate the money. I mean, wow. I mean, like, you don't do this for a living. You do it because you like it. Very few people make money at this stuff, books or YouTube, or it's very, very in the small percentile. So why not do what you love to do and talk about what you personally like? Sure, Tim, anything for you, brother. I love you, man. So my point is, do what you like to do on your channel. If you don't like somebody or you really like this or that, just do what you like. That's why I have a really short, what do you call it? Not attention span. Well, I do have a short attention span, of course, but tolerance level for haters, because I'm like, I treat this like my family. I like a good friendly chat group with no one coming in bombing somebody or hating me for this or that, or my guy's better than your guy. I don't give a shit. I really don't. So if you start up all that kind of stuff, or this Reddit nonsense, or this endless back and forth, meaningless crap, I'm just going to block you from the channel. I mean, I'm not trying to be an a-hole. It's just, I don't have the bandwidth for that, man. I don't care that much. It's same thing with Zodiac. I wasn't there. I like Don Chaney and Allen. I really do. I've told you the reasons why, but I'm not out to convince the universe of Braden or Chaney or anything I do. Go like who you like. It's a free world. I have many friends that have completely different theories. And I was thinking about one of these guys today, Evan from Texas. If y'all remember who that is, he was kind of a guy that tried to debunk Thomas Horn's theory. My good friend. I'm good friends with Dr. Horn. I haven't talked to him in a while. Hope he's doing well. But Evan kind of came in to debunk him, and he wound up being kind of a believer in Horn's theory. And I'll say this about the guy. He's a good guy. He tries to lay low, but he sent me a couple of emails one time when I'd gotten into it with somebody that I really appreciated. If I'm ever down or somebody kind of figures that out about me or stressed at work and somebody sends me some encouraging text message or email, I never forget it. And Evan did that. And he's just a good guy. And, just that's more important to me than who's right or wrong about who the hell these people were 50 years ago. I mean, in a lot of ways. I mean, Zodiac's a little different because people died, and they're still living family members that deserve answers. And especially with Yuba County 5. I mean, I do kind of believe I know what happened there, but I can't prove it either. So I try to back off of that a little bit. But, meeting one of the family members in a case like that, and I really like the guy a lot. I mean, Dallas Weir Jr. is just a solid guy. His wife is just what you would expect, just salt of the earth people. And meeting people like that just really bring it home. I mean, people like that deserve answers about what happened to their loved ones. And that's not as far away. It happened in 78, not 69, but still, people lost lives there. People lost lives, Yuba County 5. So I try not to be too forceful with what I believe, even though Tony kind of follows along with me quite a bit, on his own. It's not just because I got to agree through or vice versa. It's just, we kind of look at the case the same way, which is interesting. Yeah. At the end of the day, nobody knows unless you were there. I mean, they're probably, especially Zodiac, there's definitely some anomalies in there. That's why I never wanted to come after Horan or anything, and that was kind of the thing to do back in the day. It was kind of make your theory look better by bashing everybody else's. And I kind of had that mindset when I started doing all this 10 years ago or whatever it was. No, not quite 10, maybe 7. I kind of had that mindset, make my theory look better by making others look bad. And that's just silly. You grow out of that. And I grew out of that years ago. I'm like, that's just silly. Let people like who they like. They have their own reasons. Like, I admit it. I like Braden because I like special forces. He's a little short for Cooper. Yeah. So what? I told Billy Waugh that Godfather of Special Forces. I mean, the guy, to have a title like that, the Godfather of Special Forces, that's pretty big. And he told me, I was playing devil's advocate with him on the telephone. Pretty spry guy. He was died at 93. He died about 2 years ago. And we had 2 long phone conversations. We would text a lot. I told him he was my hero. Love the guy. I mean, I was able to see away from Ted Braden and figure out that I'm talking to Billy Waugh. I mean, the first guy that took close-up surveillance photos of Osama bin Laden. He called in on his radio, said, "Hey, you want me to kill this guy? I could kill him right now." And they said, "Stand down." He said, "I could have thrown a rock and killed Osama bin Laden." I mean, just hearing that, somebody telling me that over the phone that was telling the truth, was pretty wild. So I wanted to absorb that and have it be what it was, just outside of Braden or anything else. I just wanted to hear the fact this guy's telling me how close he was to Osama bin Laden. I mean, he said he could have hit him with a rock. He said he could have blew him up. He could have hit him with a vehicle. He had multiple ways of killing the guy. And Billy Waugh was a trained killer. Black Ops CIA, Black Ops MACV SOG, Special Forces, Vietnam. But I did, I was trained devil advocate as far as Braden was concerned as DB Cooper. And I said, a lot of people say he's kind of short to be Cooper. And he literally laughed out loud. Literally. I mean, just ha. Yeah, you have no idea what we could do. He did believe Braden was Cooper. He did. I asked him that. And fortunately, the mayor of Cooperville still had his phone number and said, "Oh, Billy's real approachable. Just call him." And I was like, "Really? Can I have it?" And Bruce hadn't talked to Billy in probably, 3-4 years plus. It had been a long time. But he still had Billy's phone number. So I just called him out of the blue and he picked up. "Hello?" I said, "Is this Billy Waugh?" And he said, "Yeah." And it took him a little bit to get going. But once he got going, he was really fluid. I mean, this guy was still jogging like 5 miles a day at 91. 5 miles at 91. That's incredible. The dude was built different. He's special for a lot of reasons. Yeah, I think Gary's innocent too. I think Gary's innocent. I've always said that. And I didn't do that just for Tammy. I just believe Gary's innocent because it's not impossible that Gary had a flare up, but it's so unlikely. It's just a low percentage hit to go with. Gary had a flare up with his shoot, what did he have? Schizophrenia. Sorry. But he's very stable when he got on the Cognitin. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that drug right. Tammy told me once he got his drugs kind of leveled out, Gary was very stable. He was wearing contact lenses. Not the night he went missing, he was wearing his Coke bottle glasses. And of course, as I believe, and I found out and wrote about in my book, that Gary had fallen out of the family car when he was about 8 years old and hit his head on the concrete really hard. And he couldn't see at all for days. It took days for his vision to come back at all. And it was never quite right again. That's why Gary wore those Coke bottles. You might already know that, Big B, but Tammy told me that Gary had fallen out of the car going to church or something when he was 8 years old in Yuba City. But it was pretty traumatic, because I don't know if he was horsing around with his siblings or the door was just unlocked and he pulled the handle. And they weren't going very fast, but fast enough. And he fell out of the car and hit his head. And I think that contributed to Gary's eyesight problem. So, see, I like sticking to 3 cases because I can still toggle between all 3 fairly easy. But if I added a 4th, it'd be that one juggle ball that they all come crashing down. Now I can't remember because I really like the Missy Beavers case. If you know what that is, the lady that was murdered in Texas. God, what year was that? It was like 15. Now it's getting on like 14 years, maybe. I don't know. I might be wrong about the date. If you could look up, Patty, the date that Missy Beavers was killed. I have a lot of interest in that case. I have a lot of interest in a lot of cases, but Missy Beavers is something that I just really, it's just one I want to dig into if I ever have the bandwidth to get into the Missy Beavers case. I think Ned's interested in that one too, Ned DeHaan. I'd love to do a show, Ned, if you're listening. I definitely want to do something on Missy Beavers. I know Ned's trying to do something more of a kind of a debate series that my friend Ross Geraci was doing, something kind of similar to what Ross was doing, maybe with Zodiac or some other cases that Ned follows, like Jack the Ripper. I don't know Ripper well enough to be able to debate it. I could debate my theory. I've debated Druser. I love Druser. Druser is one of the best Zodiac killer researchers there are. So like I said, I'm, friends with a lot of guys that have different theories. But anyway, going back to Ramparts, this is, of course, the one featuring Ted Braden. Some people try to point at this photo saying, oh, his features are too pronounced, doesn't look like Cooper, blah, blah, blah. But it is a good studio photograph of Ted Braden taken in 1967. Of course, this issue has, oddly enough, John Lennon on the front, dressed as a soldier. I don't know if he's supposed to be protesting Vietnam or what the story was behind the photograph. I really need to find out. But that's, of course, John Lennon, the famous Beatle, on the front cover. But this is about Ted Braden, and it starts out with a job wanted ad. And he literally is looking for work. This is a true I'm looking for work ad like they used to put in the magazine Soldier of Fortune, run by Robert Brown. And that, I don't remember when that magazine started, way after Ramparts. But the forward's written by Don Duncan, as I mentioned before, ex Special Forces guy, Green Beret, became disillusioned with the Vietnam War, left under, I don't think he was court-martialed or anything. I think he had served enough time to where he could just turn down the promotion and go home. He had already been there long enough to where he could just separate from the Army, as I believe they call it. So there was no dishonorable discharge for Duncan. He just really became disillusioned and a real big advocate against the war in Vietnam at the time, as somebody that had been over there fighting it. So that kind of made him stand out. But anyway, it starts with this job ad from Braden, which was a real job ad. And it started, job wanted, mercenary soldier, 14 years military service available for position immediately. Qualifications, 101st Airborne Division, World War II, master parachutist, 911 log jumps, including 695 free falls, ex-lieutenant and ex-sergeant, U.S. Army, operated in 4 countries in Southeast Asia and 2 in Africa, one in, of course, the Congo. Experienced in use of U.S. weapons, demolitions, sabotage, infiltration. Specialty is training and directing hunter-killer teams. 23 months of jungle operations in and out of Vietnam, willing to organize and or direct insurgency or counterinsurgency teams, whichever is appropriate to non-CIA supported employer. Remember, the CIA is the one that tracked him down in the Congo. So he's supposedly at least acting like he doesn't like the CIA at this point in his life. References can be checked with U.S. Army, U.S. Special Forces, CIA, again, and 5 Commando Congo. Other talents by confidential inquiry only. Absolute loyalty guaranteed to highest bidder, because Braden was all about money. That's all the guy cared about was money. It wasn't valor. He had won 2 Bronze Stars for valor in World War II as a 16-year-old during the Battle of the Bulge. Contact Ted B. Braden, Box 711301, Broadway, San Francisco. So assuming he was holed up in San Francisco, California for a while. So there's your Zodiac tie-in for anybody needing your Zodcast fixed. So this part here is written by Donald Duncan, who the aforementioned Don Duncan. It says, a joke? No, there is a Ted B. Braden and he's looking for a job. I first met him in Vietnam in February 1965 on Project Delta. Ramparts, February 1966. I guess he's talking about Project Delta in that particular issue of Ramparts. And I need to get that one, by the way. If anyone wants to send me a gift, look for that original magazine and mail it to me, please. We were planning a prisoner rescue operation utilizing halo parachuting techniques. And of course, halo means, and Tim and I talk about this a lot, high altitude, low opening, free falling from high altitude, and pulling low. Pulling the ripcord very low. Ted Braden liked to pull that ripcord under 1,000 feet, which for most free fall parachutists equals instant death. Braden was just that good of a parachutist. He just didn't mind if he died. He just always had a way of getting out of it. He loved to pull low. Tim, I agree with you. I think the DB Cooper jump was a halo jump. We know now that the Cooper jump with a 24-foot canopy, that is going to get you to the ground really fast and really hard. If you're not an experienced guy, you're going to break every bone in your body. If you don't know how to hit a tree right, even some of the best jumpers in MACV-SOG, which their purview is night jumping. If you ever hear the term smoke jumpers, guys that go in and fight forest fires, really good parachutists, like Sheridan Peterson was, those guys jump during the day. They don't train to jump at night. MACV-SOG jumped at night. They weren't jumping from 727s. No, they were basically being inserted by helicopters or better aircraft. It was more suited for lower landings into places like Laos, where you could get to the ground a lot quicker when you're not jumping from 10,000 feet. But anyway, you jump a halo, meaning you're going to pull that ripcord as low as you can because no one can see your canopy way up from 10,000 feet in the sky. And there's DB Cooper coming down. I agree with Tim. I think this was a halo jump. I'm even stronger about that than it being Braden being Cooper. I think this was whoever it turns out to be. I'd say 99% was a MACV-SOG guy and 100% did a halo. I just believe that. I think Mark Metzler think he might have squidded, what they call squidding, where he would actually pull the ripcord on the aft stairs of the 727 and the parachute would fill up with air from, the plane moving, even though it was at a low speed, and then jump off the stairs to be safer. But that's going to give so many other people an opportunity to see you in the sky. Even though it was cloudy that night, it was rainy, but it wasn't that rainy as we know now. But I think this is halo all the way. I think this is a halo jump, especially with a 24-foot canopy. That canopy's made, forget the reserves. It's like my good friend Pat Bowen says, why didn't DB Cooper demand D-rings so he could attach the reserve parachutes? Because that's something Ted Braden wouldn't have needed. He just asked for him to make him think he was taking a hostage. So why not demand D-rings if you really weren't that experienced parachutist? You would have wanted that reserve parachute. But Cooper didn't demand the D-rings. You cannot attach a reserve chute without D-rings and clamping on to your main chute on your back. Of course, he asked for 2 back and 2 front. Famously, he used the words front and back, which is not something necessarily or an experienced guy would use. But who knows? Maybe he was just trying to throw him off. But I guess you could say that about anything. But anyway, It says a joke. No, there is a Tibby Braden. He's looking for a job. I first met him in Vietnam in February 65 on Project Delta. We were planning a prisoner rescue operation utilizing Halo parachuting techniques, high altitude, low opening, free falling from high altitude and pulling low. Braden was almost a pioneer of the form and was recruited to help bring at least 2 Vietnamese to some level of expertise for the mission. Now, remember, we're fighting with the PAVN too. The Southern Vietnamese guys are on our side. It wasn't just us for the Vietnamese. The South Vietnamese and Saigon were on our side, and we were fighting alongside them a lot. So that's something to remember. Project Delta was formed by Special Forces in May 1964 to infiltrate teams in the Laos. Some people call it Laos that have been over there. Later, it took on a hunter-killer team aspect, 6 8-man teams penetrating NLF strongholds by air. Still later, it expanded to include Omega teams to infiltrating Cambodia. The teams are led by U.S. NCO, that means non-commissioned officer, with another U.S. NCO as assistant. The remainder on the teams are ethnic Vietnamese, Nung, Montagnards, of course, that's a French word, Cambodians, Lao, Thai, or any combination thereof. Now, mainly MACV-SOG teams were made up of what they call Montagnards, and they just shorten that by calling them yards. Of course, these were ethnic guys that U.S. Special Forces trained and that they loved. They said these guys were so trainable. They were badasses in combat, and they were just naturals. Of course, physically shorter than Americans, but these guys were just the salt of the earth. They had kind of their own ways of doing things, but they were very loyal and they were very tough guys. And the Americans loved fighting with them, and they loved training them. And they would always have an interpreter because a lot of these yards could, know the languages well enough to communicate with the other tribes, and even NVA prisoners, if they extracted or caught some NBA enemy prisoners, these guys could interrogate them in a language close enough to where they would understand what they were saying, from what I believe. Anyway, the remainder on the teams are ethnic Vietnamese. Said that part. The project, although made up of special forces, works closely with the CIA. The CIA basically ran MACV-SOG in the early years and normally receives its operation orders through MACV J2, Military Assistance Command Vietnam. J2 stands for intelligence. Because of the uniqueness of the project, men who have served it are often called upon to use their experience to organize and train other strange outfits. For instance, some are now in Thailand running forays into Laos and the western border of Cambodia. Most MACV-SOG teams were going what they call across the fence, and they were going into Laos. Some did Cambodia, but it's mostly Laos from what I know. Braden is among those professionals who appear to have a secret death wish, coupled with well-trained instincts for survival. He continually places himself in unnecessary danger, but always manages to get away with it. At one time, he was forbidden to free fall for violating safety regulations. Sounds like someone we know, Tim. The rules state a jumper must pull and be in the saddle before he reaches 2,000 feet. Braden makes a habit of waiting until he's well below 1,000 feet. It says well below. Underline that. 1,000 feet. That's insanity. Falling 174 feet a second. If his main chute malfunctioned and he pulled his reserve, he would have to run the last 100 feet to get it open, which is almost impossible. Braden didn't care about reserves. With no safety restrictions on jumping in Vietnam, he had a ball. Similarly, on operations deep in NLF territory, he wandered away from his team on at least 2 occasions to better seek trouble. Sounds like somebody we know. He also shares the cynicism common to the professional soldier in Vietnam. Idealism makes him uncomfortable, and like the rest, he gives it lip service only for public consumption. Braden is a heavy drinker. Remember that, Tim, that's in here. Braden is a heavy drinker, and this is coming from someone that knew him in Vietnam. But it doesn't seem to affect his physical condition, and seldom does he ever get drunk enough to lose self-control. When he does, the veneer of civility vanishes, exposing a streak of cruelty and a very unpleasant core. I know all about that because I know people that know him. About the time I left Vietnam, Special Forces loaned Braden to the CIA for their SOG project, Special Operations Group, a name so obvious that the CIA changed it to Studies and Observations Group. They wanted it to be very benign sounding, but these were the Black Op boys that were doing the badass shit in Nam. SOG drops long-range teams into North Vietnam, OP-34, as well as Laos. Most of these have been remarkable for their lack of success. OP-35 Shining Brass, Braden's group, was more successful. Most of this group's operations are short-range jaunts into Laos and North Vietnam. As in Project Delta, the teams are led by U.S. personnel, usually special forces types like Braden. In addition to the hunter-killer type mission, the teams also tap telephone lines. Braden's team was the first to tap a telephone line in Laos. One method is to steal an insulator, bring it back, and rebuild it with a voice-activating bug. They also plant seismographic listening devices along the trails, of course, the Ho Chi Minh Trail being the main one. And Laos, the teams were often sent to call in airstrikes on villages and other trails. Other times in Laos, they approach a team member's old village for the purpose of bribing the villagers to set up future in-country bases for longer range operations. This is called asset establishment in CIA parlance. The list of former Special Forces officers and NCOs who have been with SOG is like an all-star lineup. It includes people like Colonel Bull Simmons, who Braden got into a big fight with and didn't back down at all. And Bull Simmons wasn't a man to be messed with. It was an F around, find out kind of guy, and Braden didn't give a, you know what. Colonel Ray Call and Major Thorne. The latter, known as Captain Korn of Robin Moore's The Green Berets, was killed in Laos on a SOG operation. Ted Braden spent 23 consecutive months in Vietnam on this type of work, which may be some kind of endurance record for a field operator. Tons of PTSD the guy had. He was already mentally ill. I mean, he'd already served his bit in World War II and been in the Army many years after that, even before this. Something to consider. But for his type, and he was a special type, this isn't a normal person. That's why it says this, and it's good stuff from Duncan. It says, but for his type, the field didn't offer enough risk. I mean, he's already in the Black Ops unit in Special Forces, the highest level of danger you can sign up for. Like they said, when you joined SOG, you were either given a body bag or a Medal of Honor or a DSC or something like that. You get one or the other. You get some great valor decoration or a body bag. That's how dangerous SOG was. He was continuously involved in shady deals to make money, a commodity for him, always in short supply. At one time, he was also under suspicion of murder, and there's a great account of that murder in another magazine. I'll read at some point. The victim was a Vietnamese soldier. I mean, it was a friendly Vietnamese soldier, not an MBA or a Viet Cong. I want to make that clear. And Braden especially despised ARVN men. That's the friendly Vietnamese fighters with us, the Southern Vietnamese. It was probably to his advantage to be working for the agency at the time, meaning CIA ran SOG at the time. So they gave the military guys a lot of freedom. Otherwise, the press might have picked it up, thus focusing on a public court-martial. They basically just swept the murder under the rug, and I have a good account of that. And yes, Braden did kill this guy. Braden has a penchant for asking incredible favors of people, whether they be short or long-term acquaintances. On what started out to be a normal day at Ramparts offices, he walked in with a dunk old buddy to ask for help, meaning he wanted money from Donald Duncan. Braden would ask somebody he barely knew for money. That's something that people should remember about Braden. He had no qualms about asking somebody he just met, hey, you got a couple of $100? That was Ted Braden. He didn't care, but he tried to act like you were better friends than you really were. That's why he would assign you a nickname or whatever, just to make it seem like you were better friends than you really were, because he was about to hit you up for some cash. The guy was always looking for money. He blithely explained he was looking for a new mercenary group to join, and could I help tide him over? Meaning, you got any money, Don? I hadn't seen Braden for 2 years and assumed he was still in Special Forces. And catching up with how he came to be discharged, the following story unfolded. I found it fascinating. Since at the time, Washington officials were trying to explain why C-130s had been dispatched to the Congo, the old wheeze about protecting U.S. citizens. They stated the planes would not be used for combat operations. They were also allusions to a communist threat in the Congo. The U.S. citizens turned out to be State Department and CIA personnel. At least one of the planes was used for combat operations, and one of the nationalities involved, none was communist. So it's all a bunch of BS CIA lies, because the CIA would run both sides of a war so they could go in later and control it all. Yes, Cooper knew by 5 p.m. it would be dark, and that didn't bother Braden at all. He could jump at night blindfolded. He was that good. The similarities between Braden and the arch prototype of the modern mercenary, Germany's infamous Congo Mueller, are many. They can laugh about the most gruesome things. Both display an obvious machismo syndrome. Pick up on that, Tim, machismo syndrome. They share the habit of using their well-manicured hands in little gestures which detract attention from their eyes. That's interesting. Every time I read this, I pick up something new like that. There is also at least one difference. Braden is not embarrassed by the word mercenary and doesn't require a rationale of super anti-communism to justify his line of work. Mueller, on the other hand, likes to think of himself as a paid volunteer in the service of the Western world to save it from Bolshevism. Considering who's fighting whom is a specific I can't say the word, suspicious description. The 5 commando mercenaries referred to were disbanded earlier this year, because Braden joined 5 commando very late. It is elements from 6 commando that make up the rebel mercenaries with the notorious Colonel Schramm. This story is Ted B. Braden's, and it's not presented as an endorsement, but it's an important story because it shows that America's involvement in Vietnam-type wars produced the mercenary mentality typified by Ted Braden, meaning fighting for money. He didn't do it for honor or glory or waving the American flag. The dude is over there because he's good at this stuff and wants to make a few greenbacks. That's it. Or whatever the color of the money was, in whatever country he was fighting in. It was all about the money, not glory. It was about the money. That's all he cares about. And then he makes it clear himself from his own words. So these are the words written by Braden, even though I can tell this has been heavily edited. And I think Braden's boss in Vietnam, a guy named Colonel Scotty Crerar, who I get to know a little bit about more from my relationship with Al Keller. Great guy, and we're going to be interviewing him soon, and probably ask him a little more about Crerar and his relationship with Ted Braden. But anyway, this is Braden's words. The 3 of us walked from the Jeep to the hotel entrance. He starts kind of telling this story in reverse order, which I kind of like, kind of Quentin Tarantino-ish. The 3 of us walked from the Jeep to the hotel entrance. We entered the dim hallway and walked to the elevator at the back of the right side. Colonel Peters, the Congo mercenary commander, he's the guy that took over for Mad Mike Hoare. If you probably heard of him, I think there's a movie about him, something about the geese or the golden geese or whatever. That's about Mad Mike Hoare, but he had already retired by the time Braden joins 5 Commando, and it's taken over by Colonel Peters, who is Braden's boss, as he was a member of 5 Commando. The Congo mercenary commander led the way, and his sergeant major walked behind me. The moment we stopped, 4 men pointed pistols at me. That's Braden talking about himself. American agent identification was flashed. We have reasons to believe you are Ted B. Braden, wanted by the American government for desertion from the Army. I was in the bottle. I mean, he loves phrases like that. That's so Ted Braden. I was in the bottle. The colonel, my boss, who had led me into the trap, apologized and said, if I had the choice, you would stay here and go on with the project, but I don't have the choice. He didn't have to, but he explained he had been ordered from high up in the Mobutu regime to turn me over to the CIA. One of the gun toters was CIA agent Charlie Renshaw. That's somebody else we need to research, Tim. Charlie, Charley, Renshaw, Renshaw. Make a note of that. With him was a CID, U.S. Military Criminal Investigation Division agent, and a CIC, Counterintelligence Corps agent. Somebody up above wanted me back in a bad way. Of course, he was doing work for the CIA. The agents had the run of the hotel, the Aftel Arms. I was taken to room 13. I think this is in Albertville, in the Congo. I was taken to room 13 where I was photographed in my 5 commando uniform from every angle. Then I was stripped, thoroughly searched, and chained to the bed. They gave me a pair of old Levi's to cover their embarrassment. I love the way he uses words like that. I love the whole syntax of that, to cover their embarrassment. That is so Ted Braden. You get to know him through phrases like that. It was pointless to deny who I was. They had the bag I had left in Johannesburg with my official passport and other personal papers. For 3.5 days, I was subjected to intensive psychological interrogation. Why did you desert from Vietnam? ? What are the names of everyone you've talked to? ? What did you tell them? ? Did foreign agents contact you? ? Finally, it was over, and foolishly or not, I signed the transcript. I really had little choice, since in the Congo, the agency holds the power of life and death. I was to stay chained in room 13 for another 3 days. One morning, on a moment's notice, I was given an agent's red shirt, my civilian shoes, and hustled out of the rear of the Aftel Arms into a waiting gray sedan. I'm probably butchering the name of that hotel. It's AHLADEFF for people that really want to know. We started for the airport, but took the back route to the CIA terminal where I was locked in the communications shack. 2 hours later, I was again rushed into a car. A C-130 taxied from the terminal. With an able assistant from the agents, I was out of the car, up the ramp, and into the plane, all unnoticed by anyone at the terminal. I was chained to a stanchion, and we were in the air on the first leg of my return to the USA. A waiting sedan whisked me to the Fort Dix stockade, where I was to spend the next 123 days and 14 hours in solitary confinement. It was finally decided that a court-martial would accomplish little, and all interest could be best served by getting rid of me. After first having made me sign a sworn statement that I would not divulge the information I have about CIA and Special Forces operations in Southeast Asia, I was given a discharge under honorable conditions. For this, I am supposed to be eternally grateful. Big deal. I mean, he writes that in here. Big deal. That is just so freaking Ted Braden. Big deal. Of course, we know all the details of this stuff because we know Hank Birch, who was the Army officer, was a lieutenant at the time. I think he became captain in 68, but I think he was lieutenant at that point. But he was the officer in charge of Braden while he was in confinement at Fort Dix, and we have his whole story. It's documented. We have it recorded and it's written. Hank's a good friend of mine. So fortunately, this part is all several interesting things in that story from Hank, who became fascinated with Braden after witnessing him in his jail cell at Fort Dix, having a TV set in his cell and filtered tip cigars. Like, they literally had filters on the tips, which was a no-no at Fort Dix because the prisoners would collect them all and stuff up the toilets with them and stuff. And so he knew Braden was being treated by someone high up in the military, and he was being treated right. And one day Hank walked by Braden in his cell, and Braden said, "Don't worry, sir, this will all work out." Famously said that to now Colonel Hank Birch. Braden again. I was at the Carville Bar in Saigon when I first heard they were hiring white mercenaries in Africa. Christmas 1966 was 4 days away. I had been in Vietnam 23 months, had worked for some good men, enjoyed my share of women, probably drank more than my share of good liquor, and had done interesting work. But I was fed up. It wasn't the work. Leading a small group in the jungle on the prowl to find other men is what I enjoy and do best. In part, it was hassling with chair-bound commandos in Saigon, empire builders, bureaucratic bunglers, and incompetent Vietnamese officers and officials. Reminds me a lot of D.B. Cooper letter number 6. That's all I'm saying. Just go read that and read this article and tell me there's anything similar there. But mostly it was money. This is his own words, but mostly it was money, money, money. I was getting older, but no richer. It's all, I want to make money, and I want to make it in a really high adrenaline, felony kind of way. I was in the business of hunting people, and when necessary, and sometimes when it wasn't, of killing them. That's all right, but it's risky and very often dirty, sweaty work. Like I say, it's a business, but the ones making good money were the agency boys in their air-conditioned offices in Saigon, or the agency boys in their air-conditioned offices in Saigon on Tran Vang Dao Street, only on loan to the CIA, not one of the boys. I was drawing pay as a sergeant first class. I like the first class thing, but it's not possible on $800 a month. This meant I had to spend much of my time working the black market and the Piastre exchange to turn a buck. I hope I'm saying that right. It's Piastre, Piastre. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, because it's something I want to know. However, the mercenaries, I was told, made at least twice as much, more for an officer, with even better opportunities to make $1 on the side. I was already a mercenary, but a poorly paid one. So he considered himself a mercenary even in Vietnam, which is interesting. Like those in special forces who have volunteered for their 4th and 5th tours in Vietnam. I know Jim Hedrick did. I didn't extend my tour for glory, honor, country, only for money. I didn't know who or why the mercenaries were fighting, but that's of little consequence to a professional. Getting from Vietnam to the States was unbelievably easy. Then after balling it up over Christmas and New Year's, I departed Miami International and arrived in London on January 7th. A short visit with friends, and it was off to Belgium on the 9 p.m. There you go, Belgium, Tim. Boat train from Victoria Station. I had been told that recruiting was being conducted from the offices of the Union Minerie de Hout Katanga. I'm sure I'm butchering that. The mining union of High Katanga in Brussels, Belgium. As it turned out, the information was bad, but I was referred to an office where a man did some calling around and told me the best bet was Salisbury, Rhodesia. I arrived in Salisbury on the 13th of January. I checked in at the rather classy hotel Meikles, Meikles, then proceeded to one of the 3 bars on the premises looking for information. I was trying to find a lead to Major Mike Hoare, a citizen of South Africa, the original commander of the Force Dashimbe, the white mercenaries now known as 5 and 6 Commando. 5 Commando is comprised of South Africans, Rhodesians, Englishmen, some Canadians, and the odd American, meaning Braden. He was the only American. 6 Commando in Kanasha, Elizabethville, is made up primarily of Belgians, about 300, all airborne, who act as militia and palace guards for Mobutu. Of course, was one of the fighting leaders over in the Congo. In the bar, I chance upon Sis, the Scottish-born proprietor. I no more made up a tentative inquiry about the major when she openly announced, "Oh, you want to contact 5 Commando." Sis was only the first who not only didn't have qualms about discussing white mercenaries, but talked about them as casually as the weather. She then proceeded to tell me about Major Hoare, that Major Hoare had retired and was living in Durban, South Africa, and that 5 Commando was now under one of his old officers, a Lieutenant Colonel John Peters. Bad news. The commando recruiter had left Salisbury 2 weeks before for Johannesburg and wasn't expected to return. Sis then put me onto one Ralph Hyder, who could be located at the Hotel Windsor bar. He wasn't hard to find, a matter of following a loud voice from the street to its source in the bar. Ralph Hyder holding forth on Ralph Hyder, a clipped mustache would neither hide a mouthful of bad and missing teeth. See, Braden was all about his appearance, so he noticed flaws in other people like that. It hid a mouthful of bad and missing teeth, nor detracted from his modeled boozy complexion, about 5 feet 10 inches and 200 pounds. He had a bulging gut and an overall flabby look. See, Braden liked to tear people apart about their physical appearance. Not very encouraging, but he was my only contact. 2 drinks later, I cautiously approached the subject of 5 Commando. Caution was unnecessary. Hyder not only knew of it, He had been in it and welcomed the excuse to expound on his adventures in the Congo. He ended up telling me I shouldn't waste my time with 5 Commando, but should get into a good organization, a new De Force Toshimbe. He gave me the impression that the 5 Commando were numbered. The days of 5 Commando were numbered. That is true. By the time he was joining their days were indeed numbered. It took a little doing, but after 3 hours, I was able to edge in my background and experience. At that point, he made an open offer of recruitment. The money was right. I would make no less than $1,600 a month. On subsequent trips to the Windsor bar, I discovered Ralph Hyder was one of 3 people openly recruiting for DeForest Toshimbe in Salisbury. Hyder seemed to be having better luck than others, and I met 5 or 6 of his recruits, all with prior mercenary experience in the following days. Okay, so I'm going to end it there, and I'll finish this up on the next show because it's going to take a little longer than I thought to read the whole article. But I want to get this article on the YouTube channel for people that either don't have access to the magazine. I think there's a PDF version out on the internet that you can download and read pretty easy. I don't know. I'd love to forward you any photos that I don't have. I'm actually a member of a Facebook group for 5 Commando. And of course, Braden fought under the alias of a Canadian when he fought with 5 Commando. He got to the Congo using his real name, Ted B. Braden, but then he took on the name of a Special Forces soldier who was a Canadian citizen that had moved to America, but still held his Canadian citizenship, and was killed in a training accident in Special Forces where a mortar pre-exploded in the tube and it killed this poor gentleman. And Braden remembered his name and used that name as an alias, Canadian alias. That's where that comes up, of course. But that is at least half the article. I'll read the other half. I'll do it this week, probably by Wednesday. I'll read the second half of the article, and then I will read also the article that's in the Naval Warfare Magazine. And you're wondering why would Brady be featured in a Naval Warfare Magazine when he was in the Army? It's because it talks about the few Navy SEALs that were embedded with SOG, and one was a gentleman named Gary Shattuck. And unfortunately, I know Kim Conboy that wrote that article, and he misspells Gary's name is Shattuck with a T. It's actually Shadduck, like a quacking duck. Maybe he did that on purpose. I don't know. I never asked him, but it's a well-written article, so I don't know how you'd screw up the guy's name. But Gary Shattuck was a Navy SEAL, and he was embedded with Braden to actually go into Team Colorado and keep an eye on Ted Braden, because this was after the mysterious murder of the friendly South Vietnamese fighter, and he was sent there basically just to spy on Braden to see what he was doing, without taking him out of his team lead position. They sent Gary Shattuck, a Navy SEAL, in to kind of keep tabs on Braden. And I remember when Braden went on his last mission, this will come up in that article, how I don't even know if he left armed for that mission. It was almost like he knew he wasn't coming back, or it was just had zero fear of death, and even maybe intended to die that day. It's really interesting if he did or not, but that's why the article kind of winds up being more about Braden and the Navy SEALs, which is so interesting because, when Ken's writing the article with a co-writer, he gets so fascinated with Ted Braden that the article takes on this tone about Ted Braden and not so much Gary and the Navy SEALs. It becomes this article about the enigmatic team leader of Team Colorado and MACV SOG, which of course is Green Beret Army Special Forces. So a great article. I'm glad that that was written. It was a 1980 magazine. Of course, this one goes back to 1967, October 67. This original copy, you have 2. There's still a few left out there. There's not many copies left that are in good condition like these, but you could still find them if you're a big Braden fan like me and my mate Tim here are. You can definitely pick up an original copy of Ramparts, which is it's a really neat magazine to have no matter what. Thanks, Mary. Glad you tuned in. I don't know what time it is over there in the land down under, but I'm sure it's thank you, Patty. Thank you for holding it down. Darnell, always good seeing you. Tim, I'm sure we'll be talking tomorrow. Big B Art, I promise I'm going to do a Yuba County 5 show soon and dig into that a little more. Now that things are kind of calming down at work, I can expand my bandwidth. And hopefully we can get some answers in that case. I've taken Yuba County 5 pretty hard. So is Tony. I've spoke with the boys coach. I've spoke with everybody, and I talked about this with Tony and Dallas Ware Jr., that I want to speak to the town bully. Everybody that knows Yuba County 5 knows the name. I can't say it, but he's still alive. I want to talk to him basically just to rule him out. He's a bad guy. He did a lot of bad things, but maybe he's turned his life around, and maybe we can take him off the table, because if we can remove him from the whole scene of Yuba County 5, we can kind of focus in more where I think what happened to these guys when they left the basketball game in Chico and someone interfered with them. I think immediately after they left Barrett's Market, because Mary Davis, that was working the store that night, just remembers being mad that they came in so late. There's rumors that there was a fight in the parking lot, but Mary has no memory of it. But remember, she was ready to get the hell out of there. Maybe her boyfriend was waiting at home. I don't know. My belief is the boys did make it on the road, and that someone pulled them over under some guise of a stranded car and a car jack out there, and they're trying to change a tire, and they just knew the guys were going to come by. Or maybe they really did have a needed some roadside assistance, and they saw in the boys a group that they could either mess with or take advantage of somehow, and they didn't gamble on Gary not being like the other four. And because Gary was a barroom brawler, but he was wearing his Coke bottle glasses that night. I mean, that's confirmed by his father, and remember his stepfather, Bob Klompf, and remember that maybe that's something they would find of Gary's remains. Of course, no remains of Gary Mathias have been found to this day. And we had was it the Bear Fire up there that destroyed so much of the area in the Plumas. And our belief is that Gary just made it further away. My belief is that it left the trailers earlier than believed. I do think he made it to the trailers, and that's even up for debate in Yuba County 5. But all things we're going to talk about, me and Tony on a future show, because I know that's probably the most popular thing I cover more than anything is Yuba County 5. So I wanted to focus my attention back in that area as well. That's why I just don't have the bandwidth to take on another case, as much as I like Missy Beavers, and somebody keeps asking me to cover the Stephen Paddock shooting in Vegas. I really want to cover that, because that just reeks of CIA. Just reeks of CIA involvement to me. MK Ultra, if we want to go weird, that's the Stephen Paddock deal does not add up. Sorry, it doesn't. He's right. Thanks, Lee. Appreciate it. Thanks, Mary, for showing up. Patty, thank you for all your hard work. Tim, talk to you tomorrow. Richard, good seeing you. Hey, Wesley, missed you earlier. But yeah, go for look for that picture, Wesley. It's definitely in the I think on the desktop version it's called Community, and then it's just called Post or something if you're on your cell phone. The name changes under YouTube, but if you go back about 5 months, you'll see that picture, because I had my buddy enhance the photo, bring it up, and kind of clean it up a little bit of Cheney. And I think that photo of Cheney was taken just very close to the Lake Berryessa event, and he's back in Southern California with his in-laws. No, that's interesting. I didn't know you knew Jackie Hewitt, Big B. Definitely interesting. I still keep up with the Hewitts a little bit, but have a good week, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and please leave a like if you can.